everyone. Welcome back to the CCO Follow podcast. This is our wrap-up episode, talking about reigniting the holidays. It is post-Christmas. We hope that you've had a very Merry Christmas.
In fact, though, it's day 3 of the 12 days of Christmas.
Yes,
so
I'm not really 100% on
yet.
that, but Travis is on that train.
I'm just so in it.
And actually, we're getting real close to New Year's.
Yeah.
And so we'll probably talk a little bit about that too. But Travis, just kind of taking this approach, we love to just have these, you and I, and talk about the month that has gone by and the people that we've had on the episodes, the things that we've talked about, and pull some nice little tidbits out, reminders, summaries, so to speak. How have you thought this month has gone, and what are some things that jump out to you?
I mean, I think the month went well. It's really hard to choose a favorite. Usually it's easier to be like, I really liked this conversation or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had an out-of-town guest, which was just super fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Navon.
Yeah.
We got to have my mother-in-law on.
Yep.
And even got to hear some of her story that I didn't know, just about, growing up and when she became a Christian, how it changed her Christmas experience, and then having kids, how it changed Christmas experience. And then Gabriel, his was kind of out of the blue because we originally had someone else planned, and then last minute they couldn't. And I was telling Gabriel about, how I was like, oh, now we find someone else. And he's like, yeah, man, like, let me tell you, like, I totally know what you're talking about. He just started talking, and I'm
you're
like,
perfect for it.
So like everything you're saying, I really want said to a greater audience. So please, would you be willing to come on? And so I loved what all of them had to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I think a lot of the things that we talked about were similar, right? Like, it really comes down to, do we, are we just going through the motions? Are we so busy that we can't see the reason why this whole season
exists? For the season?
Yeah.
You just didn't want to say it altogether, huh?
Are we maybe doing too much? Are we doing too little? Like, have we
just doing the wrong things?
Have we been apathetic to certain
Yeah.
things? And really, that's kind of the crux of the situation. And a lot of our answers, I mean, they're perfect answers because that's the truth.
Because they're perfect people. No, I'm kidding.
And it's being intentional about taking time to look to the Lord, right? Like it's like
being
anything,
intentional.
Yeah, it's like anything you do in life. It's about the intentionality behind it. And if your heart's maybe not in the right place, like, pray, read, look at the Word, like reread the Christmas story. Reread some of these things. Death and resurrection and the beginning of the church. Like, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But we can easily become kind of numb to it.
Totally.
If we're just doing it to check things off.
Totally.
And so I really enjoyed kind of reigniting that for me in this month. And, I have to say, definitely having Navon on, I think just goes down on the history of this podcast. That is one of my favorite episodes, simply because I miss him so much.
Simply because we got lunch afterwards.
Yeah, he went his own way to California, and it's great, and I love it for him. But I missed him a lot, so that was great to get back. But I'm curious for you, Travis. Christmas has happened.
Yeah.
We're recording this before Christmas.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone could hear what you just said. We're recording this before Christmas.
Yeah. And so we haven't had it yet, but how do you think it's going to go? Or
Christmas?
Maybe you could comment, like, it actually didn't go as well as I thought or something.
Yeah, right. I think I'm assuming Christmas will go well. We have certain standard traditions that will happen. We have some that are not standard that we're trying this year. We have some
like
that. So, it's afterwards. And my kids don't listen to the podcast, but we're taking them on a surprise time to see Christmas lights with some friends. And so that would be cool. Like going to the zoo lights.
Yeah.
Normally we just go to neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I think Alicia was like, do we take them to the zoo lights and kind of ruin their lights experience anywhere else?
Yeah.
And now there's this expectation that costs a lot of money. Because when you have a big family, it costs a lot of money. And then some friends were like, hey, do you guys want to join us? And we were like, well, now we should go. Like, we should absolutely go.
That'll be fun. I can't wait to hear how that goes.
So we're going to go to that, and I think that will blow their minds.
Future Travis, comment how it went for me.
And then yeah, so I'm sure that will be fun. We're continuing another story in the Jotham Journey series, which has been really good. This has definitely been probably, I mean, they're all sad in their own ways, but this one's probably one of the most sad of them so far. And so I'm really curious how that will end. I mean, we just don't know. And it's been a lot of good conversations with the kids. I think this year, honestly, might have some extra good conversations because I think this might end up being the year for Peter when it really has to cross over of like, this isn't about gifts and stuff like that. Because we've already had that with James where he went through a really big worrying about like, oh, what if I don't like the presents or blah, blah, blah. And we're like, well, that's not the most important part, is it? And we talked to him about it. And Peter, I think, is having that, dilemma this year. And so we've been talking to him a lot about that. I know he's still going to love the things we got him, but at the same time, it's like, okay, that's happening this year. Those kind of conversations, that kind of more deeper meaning, not that presents are bad, but they're not our focus. They're not our reason for celebrating Christmas. And so, so I think there's going to be a lot of good things this Christmas that come out of that and out of those kind of things.
Yeah. And for me, what does my Christmas kind of look like? It'll be interesting to watch this back. We're going to go to Colorado, my wife and I, visit her family. We do kind of every other year type thing. It's always a joy for me. I have a pretty small family, it's just me and my sister. And then later on we adopted, my brother, and it's always kind of been this nice little tight package. Yeah. We're just at my parents' house the whole time. And so when we go visit Molly's family, she has 2 other siblings. They both have kids, another one on the way. And she's got, her aunts and uncles are all there. Everybody's there. And so it's a much bigger experience. Yeah. And it's always fun to kind of just be a part of that, cool that, I think a lot about the holidays, and obviously, the important thing is remembering Christ. But I think I'm blessed in a way that sort of like, you and your family will be at one point because you have a large family. It really is about like the relationships that you make and the community, and surrounding yourself with that, I think is a neat thing. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
And you'll basically be guaranteed snow.
Actually, this year, I know, I was looking at the weather so every time we've gone, this, every time we've gone, it has been like, so we sometimes visit in the summer and we sometimes visit in like the fall or the winter. Sometimes we do both. Every time in the summer that I've gone, it's over 100 degrees.
That's insane. And
every time in the fall or winter that I've gone, it's been at least negative 15.
Yeah, Fahrenheit.
At its coldest. Yeah, Fahrenheit. Yeah. And this year, actually,
wish you should still go in shorts in negative weather. That sounds so cool.
It's not fun.
Like just for like 2 seconds.
When it gets below zero, cold is the same. It's just how long it takes for you to realize how cold it is.
No one's enjoying their lives there.
Yeah. And so this year, I was looking at the weather. It's looking pretty temperate. Like Colorado does fluctuate.
It's in the teens.
Yeah, it fluctuates. Obviously, Colorado is like you'll have a 60-degree day and then like a below freezing.
You're not near
night.
Ocean, so you don't get a lot of stabilization.
Yeah, and so I think the coldest it'll be is like 25, and then the warmest it'll be like 50s.
Nice.
So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to experience that. Yeah, that'll be my first time. So, but I mean, for the listeners and the viewers, if you had a great Christmas or whatever it is, just let us know. Comment, say you did.
Yeah.
Or didn't, and then we can pray for you. I'm curious, Travis, as we're kind of thinking about the holidays. Like, obviously, we talked a lot about Christmas this month, but really we meant, we mean like Christian holidays altogether.
Yeah.
And
holidays that are meant to have meaning that oftentimes lose their meaning.
Yes. And so I'm curious, as we look ahead, this is a new year happening. Yeah. We're going to celebrate New Year's. We're going to celebrate Easter soon.
Going to celebrate 12 days of Christmas.
You're going to finish celebrating those 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah. We're going to have Lent for those of you who are, doing Lent.
So like what should we be prepared for? Like let's just focus, I guess, on New Year's because it's coming up. It's most recent. It's not a Christian holiday. Yeah. But it's an important milestone every year. And with it comes a lot of, some people do their resolutions.
Yeah, a ton of baggage of like, this is how you celebrate New Year's.
Yeah. Like how are you celebrating? How should maybe like what's a great encouragement for a Christian in this time, because we do look at the years ahead and try to plan and try to find something. So what's that going to be like for you?
Well, in general, so one thing, especially because New Year's does tend to be celebrated the same way, I do want to encourage people, this whole time, we've talked a lot about how to change things, whether removing or adding or whatever.
Right.
And I do want to make sure I note at least some point this month that, when Jesus told the Pharisees, which is we're not basing this idea off of it, but it's something we've referenced a lot. Whereas you heap up empty phrases. One of the things we didn't really touch on is the fact that they weren't empty phrases because the phrases were bad. They were empty phrases because they had lost their heart and their joy in what the phrases meant. And, there's some people I know who for decades have had the same routine and the same tradition with certain things like New Year's or Christmas or whatever. And, but it's still meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And it still draws their attention to God. It still draws them near to God.
Right.
And this whole month, we're not trying to encourage you to say everything always has to be upheaved for it to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And so I just want to start saying that because I know plenty of people, New Year's is a very easy one to be reminded of that, because there's a lot of people who maybe reflect on the year through journaling or go back to past journal entries, or, maybe even New Year's resolutions work for them. Or I know for Alicia, a big thing is, considering a word for the upcoming year or whatever.
Yeah.
If that remains meaningful to you and remains a way that draws you near to Jesus, keeps your eyes focused on him, then by all means, you don't need to change it. Now, you might be able to improve upon it. There's nothing wrong with iteration, but don't feel like you always have to be doing something new for it to be important or useful.
Yeah, that's so good. I think as I look forward, every year, when I have time to actually rest, where I'm really not doing anything at all, I do kind of look inward and I look kind of ethereal. I don't know what the right word. Yeah, I sit and I think and I ponder. And New Year's, I'm not the type of guy, I don't love, you don't
love staying up late and seeing people and
well, yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, honestly, yeah. I'm 9:00. It's New Year's for me, and I go to bed.
Eastern New Year's.
And so it's it's a little bit different for me, and I think I want to change that though.
Oh, you're become a people person.
You're
gonna stay up till midnight.
I think this year. Well, I just think what's the point of being? I guess if I'm being intentional about following Jesus, it requires me to be involved with other people.
Yeah.
And I think this year, especially, it's been a hard working year for me. And I don't regret anything. And obviously the Lord is above it all, sovereign over my life. And, but I think something I've learned that I don't necessarily love is that because I've been so busy just working hard or dealing with certain things and fixing things, which I love, I find joy in that, I am missing some of that relational aspect in my life. And I mean, it's going to be hard, obviously, to shift that and change that. And I'm not going to call it a resolution, but I'm thinking about, being more so active about getting involved.
Yeah, that's the kind of the intentionality you're bringing towards this year.
Exactly. And in that, I think I can celebrate certain holidays better than I have been before. Like my example with Christmas is being with a community. I think that's celebrating it really well. Yeah. And oftentimes if it's just left up to me, even Easter, we work Easter. Yeah. And then maybe I'll have a nice meal. Yeah. But that's not...
It's a very inward focused way to celebrate.
Yeah. And I want to get out and get involved.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at scripture, not only does it obviously talk about community and all the things, we did a whole month about community. You can check it out, on the podcast. But never in scripture is there a holiday that's not without people. Right. Every holiday involves people, and every holiday involves the teaching, the admiration, the encouragement, the, uplifting, the whatever, towards other people. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's
even holidays that aren't necessarily Christian, we're still Christian every day. So you
never clock out.
There's Christ-like ways to go about them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming year for many different reasons. But at the same time, I'm also trying to be, Christ could come back. Mm-hmm. And I want to be prepared for that, but I also want to reach others. There's renewing my sense of urgency, I think, is important as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel about that whole thing? Like being hopeful, but also understanding that this world is going to fade away and it's different.
Well, I think that's why our hope is in God, not in in this world, not in a holiday, not in people, because even with this world fading away, even with, all these negative things, God says explicitly that this world will fade away, but his word will never fade away. Yeah. That he has a new earth, a new heavens coming, that he, will renew all things, that it's not like, he's not surprised by it fading away. He knew this was coming.
Yep. So we shouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah. He even told us. So, but sometimes we're a lot like the disciples where it was post-resurrection that they were like, wait, he told us like a dozen times that he had to die. Like, this shouldn't have been surprising, yet it was. And, that's just how it works sometimes. Yep. But yeah, I think like coming back to your original question of just like, so how do you, do maybe New Year's well?
Sure.
I think all the things we've talked about this month, you can apply. And so just one example is like one of the things we talked about was the idea that so maybe take the context of your life, I think is one of the biggest ones, and be like, God, what do you want to teach me in this context I have in this season, and apply it to this this holiday. And two in particular that stand out to me, I know in particular there was one year that it was all in my mind, as I was looking towards New Year and thinking about how it, impacted my life, and more than anything, like the imagery of, walking with Christ. And it was very much like, well, it's when we turn the calendars, it's a new year, it's a new day, it's a new, and just remembering all the verses of his mercies new every morning, how we're a new creation, and it's like, hey, not new year, new me, right? But almost like that, where it's like the sense of like the past is the past. Like God has, this next thing.
Keep moving forward. Yeah.
Where another year, what really stood out to me and God really put on my heart was the phrase "New Year, same God," and that it's like, His mercies are new every morning, but it's the same God walking through last year is walking through this year, and it's the same end goal. It's the same, and like just the comfort in. Realizing that in this new year where it's a big change, although in another way nothing changes, but it's a new year, all kind of things, and everyone's focused on new this, new that, new that, just the comfort and stability of like same God. And so people we experience life, and as we do, we have different needs, so to speak. Yeah. That God fills, and it's like, I feel this need, I feel that need, I feel this other need. And so I think one of the great ways when we celebrate holidays, again, is just what's the context of your heart, your life, and where is God meeting you in that moment? And I think that can apply to Christian holidays like Christmas, but even non-Christian holidays like New Year's, where you have all these classic themes, and regardless of how, and depending on how you feel going into that holiday and those themes, God might specifically speak to you in a way it's like, hey, I meet you in that thing. Yeah. I meet you where you recognize your daily need for new mercy. I meet you in that.
And it's unique.
Yeah, and it's unique. And so, and I think those things just, again, like I talked about before, when you let God meet you in the context of where you are, it really solidifies and becomes really memorable and impactful in a way that if you were just trying to come up with themes, like, and just like, well, I'm just going to study this idea, is not as meaningful, as impactful as like, I need this right now. Yeah. You don't remember it as well. It doesn't solidify as well. And so I think there's value in just, where are you before God right now?
Yeah, that's so good. I a lot of these things and topics that we've talked about over the course of this podcast, it all seems like it's going to one thing, which it makes sense because it is. It's going after Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it says the Follow podcast, and we imply, but technically don't explicitly say in the title, it's following Jesus.
Yeah, following Jesus. And I just think it's so funny that we're talking about, like, oftentimes I think, oh man, we've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. Like, oh man, we've talked about this before. And it's like, of course that we have. Like, it's Jesus. We're going after Jesus. Yeah. And I love that you said, New Year, same God.
Yeah.
Like I haven't heard that before, but that's so good because
Travis original, man.
You always you always hear people say, "Oh, new year, new me." And it's yeah, new year, new you.
Yeah.
Really?
And we're all looking at you like, yeah, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah. But it's so true though. It's like, but the reality is there is this sense of like regeneration, right? Like God is the same, but we, through our relationship with him, are changing and becoming more like him. And so in a way that actually does work in the right context. And so I'm curious this year, like I've never journaled.
Ooh.
I probably won't start.
You're going to start having, community and fellowship and holidays. You're going to start journaling.
New year, new me.
This is a new Arthur, you guys.
But I am curious to see like what the Lord does in my life and through me and in me as I go forward. To me, that's the most exciting part. Whatever happens, the world, ups and downs of the world, like, cool. I'll participate as much as I, feel like it's necessary to participate. But what's cool is year by year by year, seeing how is the Lord, like, how is he changing me? How am I becoming more like him? How is he using me? And looking back at those and thinking, and I love that you said that unique. It's unique in that each person in each season, is it like you're 30-something-year-old dad of 4?
Yeah.
Like that's a crazy season that very unique to a lot of, to us. And so the Lord's going to use you specifically in whatever that is. And the Lord's going to use me, in a different, and so I think it's cool to see all the little branches on the tree.
Yeah.
And just to see how those fit together this year is going to be interesting. And just looking back at last year, and I think it comes down to being intentional. I think it comes down to seeking after the Lord and doing the things that he says to do in prayer, in his word, in worship. If that sums up our, this month in our podcast, like that's really what it comes down to. So I'm curious for you, what's the encouragement as we're kind of moving on to this year, moving out of this month, thinking about, what we're trying to do here on this podcast and everything? What is your encouragement to those listening and watching?
Oh man.
I know I put you on the spot here, but I think it's good. It's good to be put on the spot.
I guess, one of the biggest themes that we keep pulling out is intentionality. And it's like, you got to be intentional with whatever you're doing. And, obviously submitting to what God says to be intentional about. You don't just get to pick your, pick what you want. But generally being intentional. But I guess the piece with intentional that makes intentionality, worth it is like, just persevere. Like, don't give up. Like, don't stop. Because, so if you are intentional for a day, well, you accomplished a little bit, but not very much. And it stacks. If you're intentional over a long period of time, it stacks. And so if you can be intentional and persevere in it, and I'm not saying that in okay, everybody, like, pull up your bootstraps. Like, Jesus, one of the greatest encouragements, I think, is when he told Peter that the devil asked to sift him like wheat. He's like, don't worry, I've prayed for you. And he tells us that he's continually interceding. And he tells us that before he reminds us of, like, you have a great cloud of witnesses, don't give up. Before he says that, he's like, I'm interceding. Like, he's interceding. Like, this is a really important factor of our perseverance and endurance is recognizing the ongoing grace we receive from God. And so be intentional. Absolutely. You will get nowhere without intentionality, but also like persevere in that, like keep going.
I, as a coach of different sports and as a sports, like I something about the culture of sports really, like I understand it. Yeah. It speaks to me. But there's, I'm thinking about this lacrosse team that I coach with my wife, the girls' high school lacrosse. And one of the things that, we were, like I had said and kind of like built the team up around was this idea of what is being, it wasn't explicitly intentional, but it was explosiveness. Oh man, now I'm gonna kick myself because I can't remember. It was like be explosive. You
built the whole team around this.
No, it was so it was explosive, intentional, and another I word. Molly, what is it? Think. Telepathy. Explosive, intentional, and I can't think of the other one. But the idea is that it's like when you go up, like let's just say you're in a tournament and you're playing for the trophy. Mm-hmm. So this is the game, winner takes all.
Yeah.
You win or lose. There's this level of intensity. Did I say intensity?
Ooh, you didn't.
That's the word.
There
intensity. You go. And so intensity, intentionality, and explosiveness.
Uh-huh.
Those are the three. Because when we come up to something, like there's this healthy level of stress on the field. Mm-hmm. Like the game's about to start. Like your stress isn't like, oh no, I hope we win. It's we're competing.
Yeah.
I'm competing to win this. Like if you're in a race,
be alert. We gotta be ready.
Yeah. I'm in it to win it, kind of a thing. And you have to have that. And I think that encapsulates this intentionality portion of like, I want to be intentional in everything that I do, all of the practice that we have preparing for this, mm-hmm. all of even your rest time. Mm-hmm. You have to be intentional about that. Am I eating the right foods? Am I sleeping well? Am I being intentional about giving myself every opportunity I can to be competitive in this thing? And then you have to be intense about that. Like you have to be intense. And there's this level of like, you got to build up this intensity and mm-hmm. you can encourage your team. You know, that helps build intensity and encouragement. Like I think like of as a boxer, you're never going to go into it being like, all right, no, like you're like intense, you know what I mean? And then there's that explosiveness is like, that comes down all the way through the ladder of like, now it's like every movement I make, like if I'm a basketball player, I'm not going to get around this guy and have a free lane here unless I'm explosive about my movement. Mm-hmm. And all of these things, I love these things, and like I said with sports, because I attribute those things. I think they're helpful in life in general, mm-hmm. and especially as we are following the Lord. Like it obviously looks a little bit different. You know, I'm not turning my page really fast in my Bible.
Yeah,
but I'm intentional about my preparation and what I'm doing. Am I praying? Am I in the Word? Am I seeking after the Lord? And in my worship, is my heart actually like, am I intensely worshiping God, or am I just feeling good because I'm worshiping? All these different things. And, even Christ talks about run your race. Yeah. And Paul, run your race. Well, like I love that because it is similar, like those different things that I coach and talk about can be attributed and applied to our running of faith. Yeah. And to finish well and all these different things. And I think that that's important. And I guess that's my encouragement mm-hmm. is like, think about those things like intentionality, like perseverance. That's a part of that same act as well, as like you have to trudge through, like in adversity. What are you going to do? Yeah. Are you going to look to God, or are you going to wallow in it? Or are you going to try to find something else because you're scared something's going to happen? Or are you going to look to God and be like, I'm going to continue to persevere and continue to follow you. I might not be able to see you in this dark valley right now, but I trust that you're there with me. Yeah. I think all those things matter. And I just want to encourage people, and I'm kind of like, I like hyping people up. That's kind of I don't know if that
like
went anywhere, but yeah, I'd like to hype everybody up that's listening and watching, and just to get after it, like.
Yeah, I mean, Paul uses a lot of imagery about, literally, I don't beat, box in the air in vain. I don't, run in vain. I don't do these things in vain. Yeah. And I mean, even in Corinthians, he mentions how we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against, spiritual forces of darkness and principality. And usually, I don't know about you, but when you read that, it's like, oh, we don't wrestle against this. There's this problem over here. And it's like, no, that's what we're wrestling.
We're wrestling.
And and I mean, wrestling is probably one of the most intense sports there is. Yeah. It's just, you can't give up for a moment. And I think sometimes we forget that our spiritual wrestling is meant to be that intense. That's just the reality of the war we're in. Warren Wiersbe famously said that life is a battleground, not a playground. And he writes about how, if you think it's a playground, you're going to act like it. Yeah. And you're going to be totally in trouble when you eventually realize, or even if you never realize, that it's actually a battleground, not a playground.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. I love that imagery, and I love that you reminded me of that because it's so true. It's like, and yeah, you're right. In wrestling, I mean, it's a full body, full everything effort.
Yeah, 100% on until it's over.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna sit on that because that's good. As we wrap up, Travis, anything else that you feel like you want to say or?
No, I mean, it's a good month, you know?
It was.
Good reflection on, I mean, things that we experience commonly. I mean, the reality is that we talked specifically about Christmas. We mentioned other holidays. But I mean, there's so many things in life that just become rote and routine. And the reality is that God does not want any of our life to become rote or routine. Certainly, there's such a good thing of habits. There's such a good thing of things being familiar and routine.
He's in the mundane with us.
But not for it to be rote, not for it to be meaningless. I can't remember who said it, but there's a big movement right now of like the idea that where your attention is where you spend your life. And so there's a lot of like even non-Christians just kind of like, you know, the 4,000 Weeks book or books like it where it's like, hey, you only have so much time and what are you going to do with it? And for things to become not routine, but rote and empty phrases and things like that is literally to a certain sense you're just losing parts of your life. Yeah. And God doesn't desire us to just walk through.
It's a waste.
He doesn't desire us to just walk through life numb. And that can very easily happen to holidays and things like that, but it can happen to regular life as well.
Yeah, waking up every day, going to work.
Yeah, and so it's been a good month and a good reminder of just not just merely being intentional, not merely persevering, but doing so in a way that you're walking with your God. And for that to become rote means we're really missing something because that's a very extraordinary thing to experience.
I love it, Travis. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for watching and listening this month and throughout this podcast. We hope that you have had a very Merry Christmas, and we hope you have a great New Year.
Yeah, enjoy the next, what would that be, 9 days of Christmas?
Yeah.
Not letting this go.
Yep.
Enjoy Epiphany Day.
And as always, God bless.